right. So, all right. So, with Rising Phoenix of Street Beefs fame, and
So,
and yeah, I just invited you to come on the show because I was kind of curious about um, a little more about your background and stuff. Like, where'd you get your start in the martial arts? You said you had a kung fu background and you were trying to adapt it using quantum physics, quantum mechanics to make it more effective in a real scenario. So, yeah, tell us more about that.
it started about 9 years ago in Norman, Oklahoma. I was with someone by the name of Derek, called himself Sifu Baihu, which is white tiger, is his favorite animal.
No.
Um, and he started the school known as Wusheng Fangshi School of Kung Fu, which is Way of the Five Elements.
Okay.
So, what he did was he took all of the classical animal styles of Kung Fu and mixed them up and added a few different things in there, like Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, and broke it up into such a way that it made it so that we could learn these things without having to learn a secondary or tertiary language. And so the first style being earth, and then water, and then fire, and then air, and then the last is void, much like the five rings.
Oh yeah, I've read that. It's
Yeah,
good.
yeah. And so all of the philosophies involved with the different ideas were there. And so if you think about, for example, your waistline would be the valley, right? And then you have your shoulder line would be the horizon, and then anything above the horizon would be the heavens, right? So
Yeah.
if I have my arm up here like this, shoulder extended for an outward block, this is outside tree because it looks like a tree coming out of the horizon, but it's also on the outside of my body. And then
Okay.
inside tree because it's a block on the inside. And so it becomes this whole visual thing really easy to learn. And so that's how I started. I was with him for probably about 5 years or so. And during that time, I was also going to OCCC to get my film and video production degree.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. It's very interesting. So, how did you originally get involved with Street Beefs? Did you find out about it like just by via YouTube, or were you sort of like in the area and you'd like heard about it from before? And
I actually found out about it because of a coworker of mine. I'm an
okay,
ambassador down on the corner, so private security,
nice.
and yeah. And one of my coworkers is like, "Hey man, you ever heard of street beefs?" And I'm like, "Street beefs? What the fuck is that?" You know? And he's like, "Dude, it's this amateur fight ring or whatever. Like one of my buddies, he does it or whatever. So you should check it out." I was like, "All right, cool. I'll look it up." So I looked at it up on YouTube, and I was surprised at the time they had 500,000 subscribers, and I was like, "Damn, this is a huge thing." And of course I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was a few chums, like, just scrapping it in the backyard somewhere. And
Right.
then I learned that it was a whole, movement in an attempt to add a way to end gun violence. And I'm like, yo, that's something I want to do. That place is perfect for me to kind of go in and get some fight experience and really kind of start working on these things that I've been thinking about for a couple of years now.
Right. It's like the ultimate proving ground or testing space, I guess, the for your experiments.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what I looked at it as, is like this is the perfect place for me to experiment and figure some things out before before I even try to go towards, pro or anything like that.
Right. Especially because I think you said in your video that one of the things about training kung fu, like with the guy that you'd been with for a while, and even yeah, like at newer places, like they don't really get into the sparring as much. It's more about the like the technical forms and such, and you don't get as much experience. But when you do, even it's like you're training with other guys that also did kung fu. Like you don't get a look at other styles, like just like maybe how you would combat with a street brawler or something, or a boxer, the rest stuff like that.
or even a grappler for that matter. You know,
Yeah.
it's one of like it's one of those things I learned that in elementary school. You know, whenever you're scrapping with bullies on the playground, and then suddenly one of them decides that they're gonna tackle you to the ground, and they just weigh more than you, and they just hold you down. You're like, how do I deal with this? So like you grow up and you get striking versus grappling, and you have no basis for what grappling is. Like it's gonna wreck your shit.
Exactly. Yeah, I found that out kind of the hard way. Like I had a buddy that, like me and him, like we went to like our local boxing gym, and we decided that we were gonna try out MMA, and we were both just sort of like messing around. Neither of us were really professionals or anything, but
Right.
like I had a karate background from the time I was in like third grade, so I could like punch and kick pretty good and move around, but I had like no real wrestling experience. So like I think like we had our first sparring session, like we were just messing around and stuff. I think I landed a couple of decent punches on the feet, and he ended up taking me down. That was Mo, and I went, "Oh shit, I have no idea what to do here."
This is a whole new world. What do I do here?
Right, and he got me. I think he got me in like a triangle choke, and I managed to like not get choked out until like the end of the round that we had timed out, just because like I remembered like something Joe Rogan had said in a UFC fight one time about answering the phone, like doing this and like sort of, and in my karate classes we had a little bit of um like choking experiences. Like if someone like has you in a headlock, you're supposed to like turn into it so that they can't crush your windpipe or whatever. But that was like all the knowledge I had, so I was just like, I need to do something about this.
Yeah.
um do you have any like jujitsu experience? Like, do you have any places around there that you could maybe like drop in at an open mat or something like that?
Yeah, there's actually a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu gym here in Charlottesville. The problem is that I would have to like hoof it on foot or find a bus that goes anywhere near there or something like that because I don't have a vehicle. And it's also they have their open mat from 1 to 3, and usually I leave my house at 3:30 to get to work on time. So there's a bit of a time constraint involved with that. I could probably go for an hour if I could just find a way there and back. So it's something that I'm mulling over and trying to figure out how to make that work.
Word. I yeah, I'd highly recommend it. Like trying to like make time to get in there, or most places they'll do like a free class for your first time if you're just visiting, but
Mhm.
after that it gets kind of expensive.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't know what it's like out there, but usually it's at least like $100 a month just for jujitsu training. But um, because I remember another thing that you had mentioned in your video was how you were trying to get away from, or it was considered like dishonorable to strike at all in traditional kung fu. Like that
Yeah.
was, you know, this is an idea that was like thousands of years old, and Brazilian jiu-jitsu is like, there's when you're practicing it, there's literally no striking involved, and it's mostly like about um, locking up your opponent in a compromising position and neutralizing their offense so that you don't need to hurt each other. It's more of a more gentle, flowy sort of art. So that's yeah, that's like one of the things that like really drew me to it, because like I said, like after I almost got choked out or whatever, I started doing my own research. Watched a few videos online, dropped in an open mat. I was fortunate to have like a few different places around town, so I could like do my free trial class at like 3 or 4 different places before I had to, and then basically try it out again on my friends later.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, and then I think I ended up like training again with that same friend. I was like, hey, I was wondering if we could just do like a little bit of like grappling training now, just because I didn't, the jujitsu training, like they usually when you're sparring, they usually start on the knees so that people aren't going for a takedown and like running across the gym, tripping over each other, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's all ground fighting, and it's really really interesting. It's like a puzzle of uh, it's like a puzzle of death.
Puzzle of it's the combat puzzle.
Pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually something that I was really interested in because it's like I know that grappling is something that is really effective, and it was something that actually is kind of going against my Sifu's training because he didn't like Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for one reason and one reason only, because when you go to the ground, you can't fight multiple opponents.
That's true.
It's just the one. And so whenever he taught us grappling, like the Japanese jiu-jitsu I was talking about, it was all standing. So one of the first things that I learned was how to do a standing chimera, which is it's a bit hard to pull off, but it's effective if you can get it. And so I went to the open mat at the Gracie Jiu Jitsu gym here, and I was like, hey, I want to find where my limit is as far as striking because I've got good grappling defense. It was beat into me for years. Don't go to the ground. Do as best as you can to not take him to the ground. And hadn't been taken to the ground yet. That wasn't something that happened. And so I went there. It's like, hey, this is what's going on. Can you show me like where where my weakness is here? And I specifically went there to find my weakness so that I could get better at it. And it took the dude. It took him a solid 60 seconds to get me to the ground, but eventually he got through.
Right.
Um, yeah, and it was one of those things. It was like I told him, I was like, dude, it was really hard to like suppress punching you in the face. He was like, yeah, man, it's really hard here too. I was like, okay, cool. So there's this nice like mutual respect that was going on. And it's just like, you know, it's hard to stick with just the grappling when you've got the other side that's available.
Right. But like the thing about it is that it forces you to actually have to, use those techniques, and like you'll learn a new whole system and everything. But I've had that same experience too, where like especially like if somebody has a really good guard and they're like their legs are just like wrapped around you, it's like a freaking like python or something. Like you're just
Yeah.
like feel constricted and like you can't get through or pass to side control or mount or whatever. And I'm like, I bet if I just like smack him in the face just a little bit, he might loosen his grip for a second, or at least not be able to be trying to submit me right now or something. But um, yeah, that's eventually like which is like the situation that I would end up being in, because you get yeah, if you end up in a cage fight. Um, one thing there's this documentary that I'd like highly recommend to like anybody that's interested in mixed martial arts. Have you ever seen it's called Choke, Hicks and Gracie documentary. You can find it on YouTube, but it's back from like it's from like the early 90s. I think it was made in like 1995 or something like that.
I
And
was 5 years old. That's an old documentary.
but it's yeah, it's about Hicks and Gracie, who's the older brother of Hoist Gracie, who's the one that was started when like UFC 1 and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But it shows him doing one of the Vale Tudo tournaments in Japan, which was like it was like an 8-man tournament, and they had like each person had to fight 3 times in one night. And uh, one of the coolest things, and like this, it was rumored like he was the big brother, that like the reason that he didn't do the original UFC is because they wanted to show that um a smaller, less physically imposing guy could take on larger opponents. But Hickson Gracie was like, it was kind of understood that Hickson was like the like more badass, like the most badass of them all. So it was really cool seeing him in action. And one of the coolest things is that the fight of the night, like they're getting warmed up, like, iced down after a couple of fights. He goes, you know what? I don't think we're like, what? They're like, what the hell are you talking about? Of course you got to hit him. He's trying to, the son of a bitch trying to take you out. He's like, nah, I'm not gonna hit him. I think
Nah.
like then for some reason that like resonated with me as being like so much more badass. Being like, I'm gonna knock this dude's head off. I'm gonna take him out, Gary. Like it's like, nah, I don't think I'm. It's like what? Like that's something you never hear.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I feel like that's like way cooler. um, so tell me a little bit more about like I watched the whole video of how you were planning to like incorporate quantum mechanics to improve your kung fu,
Mhm.
and I mean, I think I kind of explain it or understand the way you explained it. Like, it's the way um, circular, like looping are all often the most powerful. Like, roundhouse kicks or like the head, like your most sensitive areas are on the side and stuff. But I don't know. You think, as you said, it had something to do with like the movement of the electrons around the nucleus, like the way it. I don't have my like PhD in quantum mechanics or anything. So like this is all sort of new to me. Like I have like a loose understanding. I think I listened to a guy try to explain it, the Joe Rogan Experience. I kind of got it, but
Yeah, I watched that. I watched that same video on the Joe Rogan Experience, and then he had that. I think my favorite point of that video was when he was like, "This is the most important object in the universe," and he shows this like moving like toroidal thing in Joe Rogan's leg. What am I looking at? Um, those are the same kind of motions here. So we're talking about a torus or a toroidal movement. Which is essentially it's a vortex, right? So if you go onto YouTube, right, and you look up a ferrocell, you'll see a video of a guy who takes this device, right, and puts a magnet either on top or beneath it, and you can see its electromagnetic field. It's the first time that we've actually been able to see it directly without just needing mathematics or to represent it or whatever. And that particular shape is something that shows up a lot in our universe. Any electromagnetic field that shows up is going to take on that shape. So we're talking magnets will take on that shape. The electromagnetic field around the Earth has the same shape. And even like I said in the video, our auras, which not like a super mystical thing, it's we emit an electromagnetic field. It takes on this toroidal shape. And so it's one of those things that really gets me wondering, because it's like, again, we live in this fractal universe where patterns just consistently repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. And the fact that I can just pick up an object and show you this toroidal movement with just my hands,
yeah,
I think that's fascinating. And it really makes me wonder how deep that mimicry goes. How deep does that pattern follow? And since we can show it with just our bodies, and you see it a lot in kung fu, especially in drunken style kung fu,
oh
um, can that movement be something that is practical for combat? It's something that really it keeps me up at night sometimes when I just think about the possibilities. But it's also something you can't just like do. It's all like anything in fighting, you have to practice and you have to test it.
right,
But the principles are there. If you come at someone with perpendicular force, they're going to get knocked off balance unless they've got a really strong defensive position. But even then, if you take someone in a proper fighting stance and you square up, right, you push on their chest, right, they're going to be able to resist. You push on their back, they're going to be able to resist. But if you push them on the side, you can do it with one finger. They will start teetering over.
yeah,
Because it's this weird thing that I've discovered. Even I even got the chance to spar with a 220-pound Marine. He's a big dude, like 6'2", 6'3", and I did get this on video. So I'm gonna upload that at some point in one of my future videos.
no,
Um, but he comes in and he tries to take me down, and I just take my palm and I put it on the side of his face, and with one hand on his face and the other hand like pushing on one of his other arms, I'm able to keep him from taking me down to the ground. And
nice.
then yeah, and I thought it was really cool too. And then he's coming in this way, and so he's trying to put all his force in this way, and so he's like, oh, that's not going to work. So he tries to switch, and I just turn this way and put my force perpendicular to him, pushed it on the other side of his face, and kept him from being able to take me down.
Huh? That is. Um, Yeah, there is like definitely a lot of yeah, like physics is like an important part of like the like creating the most efficient art and everything. And like you like you said, like all of these movements are very prevalent even in like traditional kung fu styles and stuff. So
Hmm.
so it's not always like you don't get the sparring experience. Like some of these questions, like when applied properly, are actually highly useful,
Yeah.
which is and I don't know. So like I don't know if you have like any sort of like spiritual practice or like thoughts about like what the meaning of life for the universe is. But there's I read about it's called actually called Mastering. It included a like a brief history of like all the history of the martial arts all through the history of the Eastern martial arts, and they actually originated somewhere in India when and there is this guy. His name was Bodhidharma, and when he brought in like Zen Buddhism to China, like Buddhism was a thing in China, but like the Zen tradition, I guess, and like the meditations, like the introspective um practice, much of a thing. Like he would host these meditations, and one thing that he noticed was like as the people were trying to follow along, they a lot of them ended up falling asleep. So he changed that. Apparently, that he had this like set of moves or like kata or something or forms, I guess, whatever you call them, and it turned into like and apparently like the according to this book, which I don't know how super legit it is, because he was and he had attained like some level of enlightenment at some point, and like these moves had just revealed to him from the universe, like these ancient kung fu moves or whatever, like may have been like directly from some guy who had contact with like higher existence, and like these moves were like revealed to him, and like maybe he didn't understand the quantum mechanics of it or whatever, but like it would
Hmm.
like that's just like went through the back of my mind, like that's why it would make sense that like these patterns are similar to those of like these toroidal objects that you talk about.
Yeah, I agree. So Bodhidharma, when I did my research on him, learned that he spent 9 years meditating in a cave because he, saw those monks falling asleep. So he spent almost a full decade meditating in a cave, looking at nature, and then came up with the traditional styles of Shaolin Kung Fu, and that's how Shaolin Kung Fu was born. And then,
Mm-hmm.
he gave it to them, and they took it from them. So here's the interesting thing about that. I do believe that spirit exists. Um, but what really fascinated me was when I looked at that Ferrocell video, and I saw that toroidal shape of the electromagnetic field of a magnet.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at it and I saw sacred geometry. And so I thought to myself, how in the world do we get this sacred geometrical pattern, which is like also thousands of years old, right? And you see it show up a lot, especially in the mandala, in Hindu beliefs and things like that. And and then suddenly it's like, all right, we're gonna look at the electromagnetic field of mag for the first time ever. Boom, and it's like that's sacred geometry. Why? How how does that correlate? You know,
Yeah.
I entertained the thought one day that whenever you enter into deep meditation, we start getting into the inner workings of your body, right? And if we're also emitting our own electromagnetic field, wouldn't it make sense if we could go into deep meditation and then suddenly visually see what it is that our body is producing?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's like that's really interesting. I feel like whether or not like you necessarily have like a spiritual belief, I think that a lot of it is it's like one and the same. Like when you like actually like start like pause and like take a moment to just like ask yourself like what am I, like we all that was like one of the things that I liked about when I started studying Buddhism or whatever. Like, it's not really so much about like a deity that you worship or anything. It's, like understanding what we all are basically, like where we come from. Like, it's not um like what our mind really is, and like the inner workings of it, like how, like, not like our ego self of, like, who we think we are or project into the world, but rather like the observer that's like comes through all of us, and potentially uh like incarnate something all over time to itself. That's yeah.
Yeah, Alan Watts made a distinction at one point. Have you ever listened to Alan Watts before?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoy listening to Alan Watts Chill Step. That's some really cool stuff. Um, but he said you did were not born into this world or this universe. You came out of it.
Right.
And it seems like such a simple thing to say. And at first I was like, oh, like, you're just trying to sound cool. But then immediately in the next moment, I was just like, I started thinking about it, and it's like, no, wait, that makes infinitely more sense, because we aren't above nature. We didn't create nature. We are a part of nature. We came out of nature. We I wrote in a poem one time that we're just a lotus floating on the cosmic river of the universe. We're just spinning around, going through this whole thing. We're clinging to this like wet rock that's spinning, and that wet rock is spinning around this giant ball of fire, and that giant ball of fire is spinning around a giant black hole in the center of our galaxy, and our galaxy is hurtling towards another galaxy, and there's all these different things. So again, whenever I say that the torus shows up like everywhere, that vortex, we're not just here orbiting the sun in this little like circle like this. We're moving in a vortex like this, like a corkscrew. We're
Right.
flying through space, and it's just like I don't know, just it seems so absurd and fascinating all at the same time. But when he made that distinction, it was a lot more sense. It's like, you know we didn't come into this world. We were born out of it, and that really got me thinking there for a while. It's like, man, that's a huge, profound epiphany to just suddenly have.
Yeah. Like when you meditate on stuff like that, like where I think like another quote, I think this one might be Carl Jung or something. I could be totally wrong, but they said people don't have ideas, ideas have people. Like, so like we come from the cosmic consciousness to live out like some sort of idea and like embody these different concepts all throughout time. And we'll like I feel like there's a reason that like different people, like based on like whether it's just their circumstances or whatever, like we all have like a certain thing that we're into. Like, you were I'm sure you were naturally drawn to the martial arts, like for some reason, like that was like extra fascinating to you, and like you wanted to learn more about that, and it's led you down this path of um trying to find like a deeper understanding of everything, and so that you can explain it to other people, which I think is super cool.
Thanks.
But
Yeah. Go ahead.
like that was pretty much it.
Yeah. It started when I was young. Like, I wanted to get into martial arts when I was really young. But even back then, it was like $95 a month or more, and it's still kind of the same price, and that's still a lot of money. Um, and so I didn't actually really get much opportunity to get into martial arts until I was an adult, and I met Sifu Baihu. And but outside of that, it was mostly just me and bullies on the playground. Um, and that started after I had an interesting experience with my sister. So we're playing in the backyard, right? Just kicking a soccer ball around, and at one point I kick the ball and it goes at the top of the fence and it breaks the top little plank off because it was just an old fence and I happened to kick it really hard and it goes over into the neighbor's yard and they have 5 dogs over there. German Shepherd, a Blue Heeler, and 3 little Jack Russell Terriers. And so she decides that she's
Sandlot.
Say what now?
You've seen the Sandlot?
The sand, yeah.
Like
yeah.
that has a fence, and you got to get it back from the dogs. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And so she's like, okay, well, we gotta go back over there, because we would kick balls over there accidentally a lot, and so our mom was getting really really tired of our shit. And so she climbs over there, and I guess the dogs were just in a particularly bad mood that day, and they started growling at her, and so she picked up a stick in order to defend herself,
Mm-hmm.
and they started attacking her. And the moment that I heard some of her clothes rip, I don't know, something in me switched, and somehow I was anywhere from 7 to 10 years old. It's kind of hard to remember the exact age. But I scaled this 10-foot fence and hopped over and just started defending her as best I could. I went down and I grabbed the German Shepherd because it was going around her neck, and I pulled him back with the collar and just, punched him like I saw in Dragon Ball Z, right? Like I grew up on that anime. Between that and Jackie Chan Adventures, there was. Say what?
Jackie Chan Adventures. Like I just remember that when I was like, man, nobody talks about that one anymore. But it's like super.
Yeah, dude, Jackie Chan Adventures was the shit, man. There was an episode where he fought these like demon dog things, and I saw him like I just I'm a visual kinesthetic learner, right? Monkey see, monkey do sort of thing, and then adapt to what feels good and what feels right. And so I just did what I saw him do. He picked one up and just went and punched it right up under the jaw. So I did that. When I picked it up, I didn't know what it was at the time, but it started doing the death shake, where they start shaking back and forth, right? If I hadn't had jumped from the fence and grabbed him, he would have ripped her throat out. Like we're talking like milliseconds of difference here. And so I grab him and I do it and I go, yeah, and punch it right under the jaw, and it goes and falls over. And then I start just fighting all these dogs off, and the element of surprise was on my side because they weren't expecting something to come from the sky and start beating on them.
Right.
But I was able to fend them off and pick her up and take her over to the shorter fence at the opening of our neighbor's backyard, and I went to go push her over, and I could just that sense of danger, like when your back is turned, you're like, go, because they're gonna get me, just go. And she's like, wait. She picks up the soccer ball and she just throws it over. I'm like, what are you doing? Just go. So I push her over.
That's the reason we came.
Yeah. So she throws it back into the yard, and then I push her over the fence, and I turn around, and then there's all 5 of them just they're kind of starting to walk towards their ears back, and they're starting to growl, and then a mistake that I made then I didn't realize was that you don't look an angry animal in the eyes because it's a direct challenge. But I locked eyes with the German Shepherd, and then I decided that they're growling at me. Well, I'm gonna growl back, and so I took a step forward and did the Goku thing, and I start shouting at it. Yeah, and then they're all like, nope, we don't want any of that. And so they kind of ran off, and then at that point is when I turned around and I jumped back over the fence, and then went around the driveway and into the front door. And of course, at that point, my sister, she was bleeding, like they did some damage on her. But so at first, our mom was angry because again, her daughter's coming in and she's bloody, and she's like, "What did you do?" I'm like, "It wasn't me. It was the neighbor's dogs. I promise."
She's like, "You guys are playing soccer wrong."
Yeah, right. But dude, it shouldn't have worked. It should not have worked. I had no fight experience. I had no martial arts training. It was pure instinct. The only thing I had was what I saw in Dragon Ball Z and Jackie Chan Adventures, and that was it. Um, and so it was, ever since, then shortly thereafter, their bullies started, beating up my sisters on the playground, and I was like, man, fuck that shit. And so anytime I would see them try to beat up my sisters on the playground, I would go kick their ass, and then that just kind of um, went on from there. And it went from just defending my sisters to defending my friends to defending anyone who was being unfairly bullied. If anybody, and sometimes that meant that I fought my friends,
Yeah.
because they would start being mean to somebody. I'm like, hey, don't be mean. Why? Well, I'm gonna punch you in the gut if you do. It's not okay. I mean, that turned me into a bully of sorts. But that was all of my fighting experience until I became an adult and started sparring with people and actually being able to get into martial arts proper.
That's really so. Your whole life, like from childhood, you like sort of took on the role of being like sort of the defender of those weaker than you or whatever. So that's awesome, man. I like that. That's a really cool story. So what's the if you wanted to talk about like maybe some of your previous fights, like the most recent ones, you had two fights in one day,
Yeah,
the Black Lightning and that crazy Dutchman that you encountered. Like, how was that?
Caillou
The
is his name.
what was it?
Caillou.
Caillou.
Hmm.
I just thought of like that PBS show with the little bald kid that's whiny all the time. Not to be confused.
I don't think I've seen that. I'm not sure what that is.
Oh, yeah. I don't think it's like spelled the same or whatever. But anyway, that's yeah. So which one actually came first in the day? Because they all got uploaded like throughout the next couple days. Like, so what order did that happen in?
I fought Caillou first, and then I fought Black Lightning after him. Um, but yeah,
That's
it was. Hmm?
that's what I say. That's enough help just because um yeah Caillou no offense you took a pretty rough beating in that one, but he was like bigger than you, and like I think the Dutch have a really strong tradition of kickboxing, so like he's probably had like a ton more actual like fight experience. So that was yeah, that's crazy. Like after that, you decided like I think I got one more good one in me.
Yeah, yeah. So it's funny because um, my ride kind of canceled on me like last minute that day, and so I had to try to find a way to get there, and so I wound up borrowing a friend's car and driving. Um, and when I got there, I wound up being a little bit late, and so I was late to the weigh-ins, and I was late to all these other things, and eventually I caught face. I'm like, hey man, I haven't paired up with anybody yet, like and I want to do MMA. He was like, cool. Will you do a kickboxing match with this guy? And he points to Caillou, and I'm like,
Shit.
kickboxing, man, I came here for MMA. And he's like, look, this dude flew all the way from the Netherlands, and nobody will fight him. And I was like, one, he flew overseas, and
Right.
two, no one else will fight him.
That's what that's what
Mm.
it's like. Okay, if this guy came like all the way from the Netherlands, like flew in for like an amateur event, like he's like he came for a reason. Like he was about to fuck some shit up.
Dude wanted to fight, and I'm like, I feel that. I love fighting too. Like, no one else will fight you. That piqued my interest. I was like, why? Why is no one fighting you? And and so I was like, all right, man. I've never kickboxed before in my life. Face, I've never kickboxed ever, but I'll fight this guy. As like the dude flow. I can't. He spent so much money to come here. Like that's not okay. Like if someone wants to
But
fight, let's fucking fight. You know. And then I found out after I agreed to this fight that his brother is one of the top pro kickboxers in the Netherlands, and that's who he's been training with for the last 3 years.
yeah,
You're right. And after I agreed to this, I mean, not that it really would have swayed my decision much, because there's always something to learn, whether you win or lose. There's always something to be gleaned from a fight.
right,
And
right.
And so I was like, every fight that I get in, it makes me stronger. Every guy I go up against or girl that I go up against is going to make me stronger. And and so I listened to this guy, and he's like, yeah, 3 years, and then he's like, so what do you do? It's like, oh, I've been practicing kung fu off and on for about 10 years, a little bit of Krav Maga, a little bit of Buddha Taijutsu, a sprinkling of Muay Thai, because that's just going to happen when you get involved in MMA. He was like, oh, so you have some skill. I was like, some. I lost my first fight, and I'm a bit out of practice, but I do have some skill. Like, it shows up. He's like, okay, well, you're making me a little bit nervous. And I was like, oh yeah, I got this in the bag. And then my brain was like, hey, what's the first rule of combat, Nate? Never underestimate your opponent. This is
Right.
this bit of a mind game. You make him nervous, he's comfortable admitting that to you, which probably means he's a strong fighter. I mean, look at this guy. And so I was just like, oh yeah, let's not fall prey to that
Right.
naive amateur mentality of like, oh, I've got this. It's like, no, go in there with all you got. And the dude, he was like, all right, so you've probably felt this, right? Like whenever you strike someone full force and when they strike you full force, like there's that energy reverb where you can actually feel like the constitution of their body, right?
Yeah.
This dude was 100% solid. Like nothing jiggled as far as I could feel in that moment, because
Right.
like when Black Lightning, fought or fought me, or whenever you fight anybody else, if there's any sort of jiggle in their body, you can kind of like feel it.
Yeah.
Dude, there was.
There's like a little bit of give to them.
Yeah, yeah, and this dude, none whatsoever. Like, and I could tell he was pulling everything from his core, which you absolutely should be. But that was different from the other two people that I fought. They weren't pulling from their core. It was up here in their shoulders.
Yeah. Arm punch.
Yeah, and so I got the sense when I was fighting Caillou that he could keep this up for like 5 minutes at a time. Like he was barely getting started. Like by the end of our fight, he wasn't even sweating, dude. Like not even a little bit. Um,
Dude.
but it really just surprised me, because I was like, okay, I got this, I got this thing going on. I'm a lot better than last time. I'm not as injured as I was the first time. I wound up actually ripping my quad in that first fight against Odin's son, because I went into the ring with an injury. Um, but this time it was like I was doing the best that I could. And at one point, I remember I threw a punch at his face. I'm like, okay, I got him. And he just goes, slip. And I was like, son of a bitch.
Dude,
Like,
yeah.
I wasn't even mad. I was just impressed.
Right.
You know? Like, the dude.
I'm not even mad. I'm impressed. This is
I was.
in
And
the holy shit, what is happening?
right. And I was doing my best. And then at one point he kicks me, and you can actually watch this in the video. Like I catch his kick. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take him to the ground now. But then I was like, wait, I can't. There's no grappling in this. I was like, fuck. So I threw his leg away, and I get popped in the face twice for trying to remember the rules.
Right.
Um, yeah, and then I kept remembering like trying to use elbows, and I'm like, wait, I can't use elbows either. So there was a lot of like, what can I do in this fight? Because like the knees are only allowed to the body, but it feels like his belly button is at my face sometimes. So like where am I gonna go with this? And then anytime I try to retaliate, he was fast. He was fast. He was strong, and his training really showed. But it really, I was wondering about a week before, like, it was like, okay, with these guys in UFC and the bare knuckle, brawling league and all of these other pro things, like, what level are they actually at? Like, what is something like that you can't just see with the camera, right? What's something you can only get if you actually fight these guys? Like, what level are these people really at? And when I fought Caillou, I got a taste of what that pro level is like.
Yeah.
And it's something that I got a taste of that day that no one else did. So it set new goals in my mind of where my stamina should be, where my speed needs to be, and whatever. So like now I know it's like, okay, if I'm gonna go pro, I know at least the starting point of where physically I need to be.
Yeah.
So that was a really good experience. And he's also like, he's a good guy, man. Like he was like, okay, so we're gonna touch gloves before, right? Like it's good, it's gonna be like respect. I'm like, yeah, dude, we're here to have fun, we're here to fight, we're here to get better. That's the whole point. He was like, Okay, cool. He had this huge grin, like, because he was honestly worried about it, right? He was pretty honest. He's like, we're actually going to touch gloves and do this, right? I was like, yeah. He goes, okay, yeah. And this huge smile goes across his face.
That's awesome. Yeah, because like sometimes people like they either don't touch gloves or like they'll like go to touch gloves and then like go for a cheap shot right away or something like that.
Yeah,
But
because they're dicks.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that's yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, sometimes there's something to actually like just getting that experience with somebody that's like a couple levels above you, and you realize like you think you're doing pretty well, and then you got to realize like, oh, so like this is the next level. Like now like it gives you a sense of where you're at and like just the things you need to work on. Like
Yeah.
when you're not winning, you're learning. So like that, like I've had that a couple times, like when I was just doing karate and then I started trying to do like Golden Gloves boxing. And like I just been practicing on like the heavy bag in my basement for the longest time, and yeah, I could look really good. I could tear up a heavy bag pretty good when I was like just training by myself. But then like when I actually got into the ring with some of these guys and like try to punch in the face, it's, oh wait, I'm not used to them moving. So you end up whipping punches and like you realize like when you miss, it actually even makes you more tired than than actually like hitting the bag over and over again
Yeah.
because you know you're just not used to it. So it's yeah, like it's a good thing like to once in a while, um, just kind of like be able to check where you're at so you can actually like see the progress that you need to make to get to that next level. So yeah, that's like I'm glad you got that experience then. So
Me too.
yeah, so you did that and then took another fight again against Black Lightning later in the day.
Yeah. And
That,
that was interesting because in my fight with Caillou, right, he kicks me in the chest, and I guess he expected me to drop. And then he comes in for another kick with the same leg, but I didn't drop. I
mhm,
guess I'm tougher than what most people seem to really give me credit for upon initial glance.
yeah.
Um, but because I didn't drop, that meant that his aim was a little off, and so he just like pops me right on the cup, and you can
Ooh.
hear it in the video. Yeah, you can hear it in the video, and that dropped me. Um, and it's like it's so it was like I dropped to the ground, and the pain was really intense. Like at one point I thought, I'm like, am I gonna throw up? And like I hate throwing up. I absolutely hate vomiting. Like
Oh,
it's no bueno.
especially
um,
like people like that. That would, yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's like am I gonna throw up? I'm like, no, I'm not. It's like this pain is intense, and so I just kind of did like a quick like you know I don't know, energy distribution thing. Is like, okay, if I take this intensity and I focus that same intensity in my hand and slam the ring, then maybe that will help. And so I did, and it helped. I got, instead of just holding all of that energy there and freaking out, I got myself to move and to hit. It was a bit loud. It moved the cage a little bit, scared a couple of people because they weren't expecting a bit loud sound with the fence moving.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and then the ref was like, Phoenix, if you don't get up, I'm calling it. If you can't continue, I'm calling it. And I was just like, I don't want to go out on a fucking nut shot. Screw that.
Right, right.
And so I didn't feel like I could really move my legs, and so I was just kind of like, I had my fists on the ground, and I just like pushed off of my fists like a push up, and I had enough energy that all I had to do whenever it came up was just to kind of like find my balance, and then suddenly I was on my feet, and I was like, oh, I didn't know I could do that.
Yeah.
Cool. I didn't know I had that in me. Um, but a lot of people like they really liked it. They started cheering and clapping when I got up, and I was just like, all right, cool. And I was like, okay, let's try this again. Um, and then I was a bit more determined to get in there, and so then I took a straight kick to the chest, and then I took a straight kick to the face immediately following. And then it was like when he came in for that kick after that, it's like when I blocked it it mattered only so much because there was so much force that even though I blocked and I had a strong stance,
Hmm.
the momentum still carried me back. So it felt like it was kind of like an anime, right? Like when someone has that block and they just suddenly get flown like thousands of feet or whatever, right?
Like backwards. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that's pretty much what happened. So I need to work on better stance in the future. But that nut shot, it took a lot of energy out of me, like a lot.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, uh, and so then I was just like, okay, well that was good. I didn't get knocked out. so that's also good. So then afterward, I'm like, Face, can I get in with an actual like MMA fight now? He was like, yes, you can. I was like, good.
You earned.
So then they paired me up with Black Lightning, and he seems like a pretty good guy. And so we get in there and we start going back and forth, and it was clear to me at that point when I was talking with my cornerman that again my stamina just it needs more work. It's kind of always been my weakest point, because even when I first started sparring or whatever, like when I started doing martial arts, I was 230 pounds around that time, and so of not muscle. And so I just really needed to, started working on that. And now I've shredded that. I'm down to 166, and so I need to still work on more stamina. This is what I what I really learned out of this day.
Yeah.
And so getting in there and fighting with Black Lightning, everything was going pretty well. I was getting him wasted, so I knew that I had more stamina in general than he did. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm getting him to waste his energy, and once it's clear that he just can't do as much anymore, then I feel safe to burn what little energy I've got left here. But then in the process of that, I got hit in the nuts again,
Dude.
twice in the same fucking day.
Twice in the same day. It's like, uh, my poor future children.
Oh man, yeah. So it was. So that sucked. Yeah, that sucked pretty hard. And then I'm hanging on the fence, and then I'm leaning up against it. I'm like, ah. And the face is like, can you continue? And I'm like, yeah, man. I'm just tired of getting kicked in the fucking dick. I'm tired of this. And he was just like, yeah, well, you got time. I'm like, how much time? He's like, 2 minutes. I'm like, okay,
All right.
I'm gonna take it. And so I go over to the corner, and I knew that if I sat down on the stool or whatever that they offered, that it was just going to make it worse. So instead of doing that, I just kind of like hung on the fence where the door was, and I'm like okay. And he was and the cornerman, Wolfman was his name. He was like, look, man, I know that you're trying to rest and get that or whatever, but he's tired, and the longer you get the rest, the longer he gets to rest. And I look over at him, and I'm like, yeah, and he's not having to recuperate from the second net shot of his day.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's fine. It's fine. I'm gonna do the thing. And then but that still drained even more energy out of me. So it was it was interesting. So at that point, what really got to me, after he just kind of started eating at my ribs with his fists, my brain panicked, because at that point I had been dealt so much pain that particular day, and I realized after that moment that I hadn't really taught myself how to push through that much pain. And so like he hits me in the ribs, and my brain's like, my ribs are broken. I'm like, no, they're not. You're fine. And then he hits again. It's like, my ribs are gonna break. I'm like, no, they're not. You're gonna be fine. Just fight back. And then I get hit again, and it's like, they're gonna break. And then at that point, my body took over.
Yeah.
And it goes down, and then I feel that panic starting to happen in my brain, and I was just kind of like, all right, no, that's it. That's it. And so I called it. And that is that's kind of a hard thing to deal with, to be honest with you. Is whenever you end the fight as opposed to someone else having to end it. It's like, because it's almost kind of like you're letting yourself down.
Feel like you gave up or you quit or whatever. So it's like, yeah. But at the same time, you want to live to fight another day. Like, you want to stay safe without taking too much damage or whatever. So
Right.
I do the smart thing, even if it.
Yeah. And so I learned that particular day that it seems every fight that I get out of, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what this drill was for that we were doing, and it's like, oh yeah, that's what this drill was for, and that's what this drill was for, and so It's like there are all of these drills that I just haven't been doing for a while, and to be honest with you, it shows. It shows that I'm pretty out of practice with all of this, and so. Yeah. And so the first fight, the litmus test, was literally to just see, hey, how tough am I? How tough is this other person? What is it honestly really like? What is it like getting in the octagon with somebody and trying to knock their block off or choke them out or whatever? And during that fight, I learned I I learned the mental game for the first time, you know, because here's the thing. I struggle with PTSD, I struggle with ADHD, and I struggle with generalized anxiety disorder. So my brain is really like preconditioned to panic and anxiety. Something that meditation is actually helping out with a lot. Um, so turning anxiety into excitement is kind of, you know, one of those things. It's like, you know, there's distress, you know, negative stress, but then there's also eustress, you know, positive stress. And
Right.
if you like something and then you get all that extra wave of energy, you can turn that into excitement. Which is what I did when I started doing medieval reenactment back in Oklahoma. There's always that anxiety before going on stage, and I'm like, okay, what is this? It's like, oh, honestly, I'm just really excited because there's a lot of people here and I get to put on this performance.
Right.
And so as I'm doing this with these fights, it feels almost exactly the same, except instead of, you know, doing a choreographed fight with steel swords and armor, it's a real fight. Um, and so that first fight, I felt the limits of my brain, right? Like my mind and my body were not in sync when I fought Odin's son at all. Um, and then whenever I showed up to the most recent StreetBeefs event, um, my mind and my body were in sync, which is why I call the experiment calibration, because it's like, okay, now that I got my mind and my body working simultaneously, what do I need to work on next? Now that I got this done, what needs to be calibrated? And stamina needs to go up. My strategy in fighting needs to go up, because one of the things I forgot about Kung Fu is that it's about deception. You know, so when I'm standing with my arms out here, right, and I've got this opening right here at my head and this opening down here at my ribs, the idea is kind of like Sun Tzu, right? Whenever you are strong, make yourself look like you're weak, and when you're weak, make yourself look like you're strong. So you're always throwing your opponent off. So if I'm going to have that out and have those open, I have to keep in mind that those are the points that they're going to be going after. So if I'm going to do that, I had better have some sort of a counter immediately ready for whenever they come at that, because otherwise, well, you get your ribs eaten or your face beaten in, right? Because you've got your points open. And then I also learned that I need to do that old boxing drill, right, where you stand up against the wall with your hands behind your back, and you got a buddy with their own gloves on, and they just kind of just start working on your ribs and working on your abs, and you just kind of, you know, keep them flexed while you're breathing in and out to kind of, you know, get yourself used to getting hit in the body, but also to teach your brain how to push through that kind of pain. Because that was the thing. After I gave up, after I handed it over to Black Lightning, I sat on the stool. There's a little bit more of intensity on the ribs, and then it disappeared. And then I was just like, hey, I could have pushed through that. Like I could have pushed through that if I just focused on taking him down instead of not panicking, because that was definitely what was happening. So
Yeah,
yeah,
you can use that. Yeah, like you can put that like that natural fight or flight response to use for you, instead of like making you want to like panic or shut down. Like it's about being able to, you know, because like when you get like that crazy adrenaline spike, you know, like sometimes you can either um you know, like the time with your little sister or whatever, like you just like move and act on instinct and just you can like fly into action, or you know, you uh way force yourself to engage more. So that's, yeah, that's really fast. Yeah, dude. So we just did like a whole hour.
oh yeah.
Future look. There's one.
You're kind of breaking up on me. I'm getting like bits and pieces of what you're saying there.
So okay. So I was just asking what the future holds for you. The Is that October 5th, or is that one out in California or something?
Oh, the California StreetBeefs thing is October 9th. I think they're doing another event on October 5th. But what's been made clear to me at this point is I need to really get back into some of my drills, really get back into some training, and really get my stamina up and take the time that I need to train myself to push through that sort of pain. So I'm taking a few months off to really like settle into my training, get into more of a routine, find some more sparring partners, because right now I've got one guy who has like maybe 2 hours a month maximum that he can spend helping me out. And that's pretty much it. So other than that, it's pretty much just me studying on my own. And so that's yeah. So while I do look forward to getting back into the octagon, it's one of those things that like I need to take some time and get my body up to the standards that I want it to be, so I can actually pull off these things that I've got going on in my head.
Yeah, all right. Well, yeah, that's definitely a good idea. Let yourself. Yeah, stamina is a huge thing that like it's some. I feel like a lot of people tend to, because even if you do it for a couple minutes and then your gas better, you gotta if you can't keep it up for the entire duration of a fight, if you get tired, like it starts to get a little sloppy, and
Yeah.
Open for. But well, all right, man. It was great. Great. It was more from you in the future. Maybe more of your own videos on your YouTube channel. You seem like you. Yeah. What's the name of you just? It's Rising Phoenix.
Yeah. So you're breaking up again. It's hard to hear what you're saying. So I'll respond to what I heard. This has also been a lot of fun. I'd like to do more things like this in the future. But the YouTube channel that I'm doing is it's called Experiment Rising Phoenix.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Experiment Rising Phoenix. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, awesome, man. Well, hey, good talk. It was good and stuff, and yeah, looking forward to the future.
Likewise, man.
Thanks
Thank you
for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, up again too. I think maybe like we're getting towards the end of the record. We've or something, but all right. Well, yeah, thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you. You too.